Hello, so I'm going to be showing you how to do this alternate join, which is a join as you go um, for the Last Dance on the Beach blankets. I'm left-handed, so I'm going to show you this in a left-handed version. If there's anybody out there who's right-handed who wants to show, who wants to record a right-handed version, be my guest. You can also share this wherever you want. It's not, I'm not charging for this, so yeah, share it as and where you want to. Okay, so a few basics. I can't show you how to do this blanket right from the beginning because I'm already on row 7 of joining the squares. I only have one more row to do basically. So what I'm going to do is show you the crossed half treble stitch. I'm going to show you how to join this the 4 squares in the center. I'm also going to show you what to do on the top edge, and on the side edges, and how to work the row back and what to do there. So that should basically give you enough information about what to do for the blanket. If you do have any more questions, obviously you're more than welcome to ask me. Yeah, so I hope the right-handed people will get something out of this video as well. Okay, so a couple of things before I show you how to do the cross treble. You're going to be working this blanket in rows. Okay, so you left-handed people will start on the left and work 6 squares across, and right-handed people will start on the right and work 6 squares across to the left. Once you have 6 squares joined, say now, okay, this is your first row, you're going to start at the, sorry, no, let's make this our first row because you can see the top of it. Okay, so say this is your first row, you're going to start in the top left or top right corner if you're right-handed of the square and start along the top edge. Then you're going to go down the square and start joining the next square going up. All of that I'm going to show you just now. It's just so that you understand the idea of it. Then you're going to join the top edge as I've done over here on the side edge, which I'm also going to show you just now. And you're going to work the top edge of the next square. Then you're going to go down again and repeat the same thing for the next 4 remaining squares. Once you have 6 squares joined, you're basically going to go down the side and go across the bottom all the way to the back to the left or back to the right, depending on whether you're left or right-handed, obviously. And then you're basically going to start the same thing with the next row, and you're just going to repeat that all the way to the end. If I can show you the left edge, for right-handed people it will be the right edge. The left edge will not have a border or an edge on it yet. Okay, so it doesn't look like this, obviously, you can see that. Okay, that is going to be done right at the end when you've joined all 8 rows together. And yeah, so okay, I'm just waffling now, so let me show you how to do the stitch. I'm going to show you what you would do if you were starting on your first square for the top edge. And I'm too high up again. So basically, if this was the top edge of my square, and this was my first square that I would be joining, I would look for the central stitch of the corner square. Okay, so it's the one that you put a marker in. I didn't put markers in because I can kind of tell which one is the central one. So basically you're going to start with the corner stitch and the next stitch. But because this is a crossed treble, a crossed half treble stitch, you're going to start by skipping the corner stitch and you're going to work into the next stitch first. So that's very important to remember. So every single time you start a new square, you're going to skip the central stitch and work into the next stitch first, and then go back into the corner stitch. And how you do that crossed half treble I'm going to be showing you now. So you yarn over hook, you skip a stitch, and then you work a normal half treble stitch into the next stitch, yarn over hook, insert your hook into the skipped stitch, and complete the crossed treble. Then you're going to chain one, and you're going to repeat the same process by skipping the next stitch, insert your stitch into your hook into the next following stitch. Be careful that you don't confuse the stitch that you already have a half treble in and use that as a skipped stitch. It can kind of look like it doesn't have a stitch in it, but if you just pull it a little bit, you'll notice that both these stitches come up. So you can kind of see that, okay, that's got two stitches, but that's got a stitch in. So this is the next stitch that I need to skip. So yarn over hook, skip a stitch, insert your hook into the next stitch, make a half treble, yarn over hook, insert your hook into the skipped stitch, and then complete the next half treble, chain, and once more. I'm now in the corner stitch, so there you're going to use the corner stitch first, go back into the skipped stitch, and finish off the crossed half treble. Right, so if we pretend that this is the first square that you are working on, and you now have to turn the corner to work down this side, you would chain 3, and then you would make your next crossed half treble. Now the corner, or the first half treble of the row, you're going to not skip a stitch and start in the next stitch, because otherwise it's the numbers don't work out. So basically this first stitch that you already have a half treble in is going to be the second part of the stitch that you're working with. So you're going to make a half treble into the next available stitch, yarn over hook, and a half treble into the same stitch that you used to make the previous half treble. And there's your first corner. Okay, then you're going to just carry on with the half trebles, crossed half trebles along the next side of the square, ending in the following corner. You're going to have, just open this, you're going to have 15 half trebles along each edge of each square. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. It's important that you count, because all of us make counting errors, and I've had several places in this blanket where I've ended up with only 14, or where I've ended up with 16 crossed half trebles, where you then have to add or subtract one. I'm going to show you how to do that now as well. Say for example you have one half treble too few, so you need an extra one. Basically you're going to do the same thing that you would do in a corner. You're going to insert your hook into the next stitch, and then make a half the cross treble into the stitch that you've already used. You can kind of tell, but I mean, there's how many squares are there, so you're probably not going to find it again once the blanket is completed. So that's what you do if you, I'll do it again. If you have too few stitches, insert your hook into the next stitch instead of skipping one, and then insert your hook into the previous stitch that you've already used, and that will increase your crossed half trebles by 1. If you end up and you have too many stitches left over, you can decrease by simply skipping 2 stitches, insert your hook into the 3rd stitch, from your hook, from the previous one, previous cross treble, and make the next treble, half treble, into the first skipped stitch, so you have a skipped stitch in the middle. So yeah, so let me do that again. So if you have too many stitches, you can eliminate or join some of them together by simply leaving out one stitch. So you would skip 2 stitches, half treble into the next, into the third stitch from the previous crossed treble, and then finish the cross treble by inserting your hook into the first skipped stitch, and that will give you, that way you will have skipped one stitch that you have too many. And you know, again, it's, yes, if you look for it you can see it, because obviously you can see the hole in there, but who's going to look at the blanket that close? Okay, so I'm going to just finish this row again. Okay, so now excuse me, I have one more square to join until I'm at the end of the row, and I'm going to show you how to do that now. And then the next thing that I'm going to show you is how to join the 4 squares in the center, and what to do with the edge over here. Then I'm going to show you what to do on the way back, and just tell you about what to do, well, some things to do concerning the left edge and the very bottom edge of the blanket. So to join the next square on a normal row, not the very last row that you be, so the 8th row, you're going to chain 5. Then you're going to turn the square to the wrong side. You're going to take the next square and join it with the wrong side facing the other wrong side. Yeah, so the right side is on the outside. Then you're going to start again in the corner, skipping the central stitch of the corner, insert your hook into the next stitch, half treble, and cross back to make a crossed half treble. And then obviously you can't now carry on with chains, because otherwise you won't be joining the 2 squares together. So you're going to substitute the chains with slip stitches. So you're going to insert your hook through the gap where the chain 1 is, and slip stitch. And then you're going to make your next crossed half treble, skip the next stitch, half treble, and another half treble into the previously skipped stitch, slip stitch, and crossed half treble. Slip stitch, crossed half treble. The first thing that you should do when you get to the other side and you've joined and you realize, oh, I've got some stitches left over, is go back and see whether you've skipped a chain space accidentally. That's happened to me quite a few times before already, especially if you do this in front of the TV and you're not paying super close attention. Yeah, so make sure that you use every single chain space, because otherwise you're also going to end up with the wrong stitch count. this is a really, yeah, fast and easy method of joining your squares together, and you can use it for almost all blankets. There is a little bit of maths involved, obviously, because like this won't work for every single blanket, because the stitch count might be off, so you can't use it the same way that I've done here. You might have to skip the central corner stitch, or leave a stitch in between free, or there's lots of different variations of this, so you could always just play around with how to join this. But you can use the same idea with any type of stitch, actually. So you could just use plain half trebles and do 1 half treble chain, skip 1 stitch, or however you like. This is not the only way to join a blanket, obviously. There's lots and lots of different ways to join blankets. I'm sorry if this looks a bit funny, the way I do my half trebles, but I just don't know how to pull them all through at the same time, the hook through all the loops at the same time, and my hook usually gets stuck somewhere. But it works for me, so, and I don't find it particularly slow either, so yeah. So right now we're at the corner. So I've just made my last 15th crossed half treble, and I'm now at the corner where these 4 squares meet. Just pull it a little bit so you can see it better. So you have 4 squares here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and obviously you want it to look nice and neat like it does here. And the way that you're going to do this is by chaining 2. And then you're going to slip stitch all of these chain 5 spaces together. So you're going to insert your hook from the bottom through the chain 5, through all the chain 5s. Make a slip stitch and chain 2. And then you're going to continue joining the square to the top edge of to the bottom edge of the square from the previous round. So you're going to do a half treble and then cross the half treble into the same stitch that you used for the last crossed half treble. So in the corner square there will always be 2 half trebles. Then just a note, your next chain space that you're going to use is going to be this little one, not this big one. Okay, if you put your next slip stitch through here, you're basically going to have to add an extra one, which obviously you don't want to do. So the next chain space to work into is this one, which is the small one. So just check that you're not using a big chain space, but that you're using a small chain space. Slip stitch and work across. It might seem a little fiddly, and you might work out a better way to hold these. I find it, I can't hold them just like the 2 of them together. It's, yeah, I guess you could do it like this, put a finger in between, but I find it easier to just hold the one square that I'm working on and drop the other one as I go along. It might take a little longer, but this method of joining all the squares together in one go, if you like, is actually, I think, in the end, I guess, a little bit faster than joining strips together, first in rows and then in columns. Okay, so I'm now at the edge, and I need to join this chain 3 to the next square. So the same principle applies as it does in the center to connect 4 squares together, except obviously you're not going to use chain 5 because you've only got chain 3 here. So you're going to chain 1, slip stitch to the chain 3 and chain 1, and then continue down the side with the same formula. So crossed half treble, chain, crossed half treble, chain, all the way to the bottom of the square, and I'll show you what to do next. Right, I'm now at the, oopsie daisy, at the bottom edge of the square. So now I'm going to turn the corner, and I'm going to be working all the way across to the other side, adding a row of crossed half trebles and chain spaces to the bottom edge of the squares. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make the corner chain 3, okay, and then I'm going to insert my hook into the next stitch, do a half treble and cross it back into the previous stitch that was used already for the last stitch of the row going down the square. And then I'm going to be working another 14 crossed trebles across this square. Please do count and make sure that you have 15 crossed trebles only, or not less or not more than 15 crossed trebles, because otherwise you're going to end up having problems joining the next squares. It's not too much of a problem if you have only one extra one. I think this square I have actually got 16 on the top edge, and I was just too lazy to unravel it, because it would have meant to unravel 4 squares of this row and then all the way back to the square to fix the mistake. And I just thought, you know what, nobody's going to see it anyway, so I just left it. But if you want your blanket to be absolutely mathematically correct, I guess you could say, then rather just count. And I have started now to count each square to make sure that it only has 15 crossed double treble half trebles on each side of the square. So yeah, it's just worthwhile, so there's not so much unraveling happening. Okay, so almost there. Oh yes, and maybe I should say that the same idea applies to the end of, well, to this corner of the square, so the last corner that needs to have a cross treble in it. So you're going to insert your hook into the central corner stitch, which you use to make the first crossed half treble of the square, and you're going to do a half treble and then insert your hook into the skipped stitch, and there you go. Okay, so now you have this chain 5 here, and you're going to make another chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you're going to continue in the same manner across the next square. So insert your hook into the very next stitch, do not skip a stitch, it's like Monopoly. Do not skip go. And then insert your hook into the previous stitch which you've already worked a half treble into, and complete your first cross treble. So basically you're going to have 2 chain 5 loops that are just hanging loose here, and as you will remember, that's what we joined here in the central stitch. I did forget to mention that when you are not on the last square of the round, so when you're at the top of this square, each of the squares except for the 6th square, you're not going to do the chain 1 slip stitch, chain 1 that you did at the end, but you're going to also chain 5 and leave that loose. So basically what would have been, it would have been you would have had 3 chain 5 spaces, which you then joined with the last square of that group of 4. So when you end the top join, or you join the bottom square to the top, to the square in the 1 row up, you're going to chain 5 and then continue down the row. I hope that makes sense. Okay, I will see you at the end of the row. While we're at it, let me show you what to do if you happen to run out of the yarn. So if you come to the end of a ball, so you've got about this much left, and then you're going to use your yarn from your new ball, and you're going to start your stitch with just the leftover yarn. And then once you have the yarn through the stitch, so you've got 3 loops on your hook, you add the new yarn, or with a little bit more length than that. So about that much. And then you're going to complete the stitch with 2 pieces of yarn. And you're just going to do the next, oh sorry, thought I was finished with that crossed one. So you're going to do your second half treble with 2 pieces of yarn and pull that through, and do your chain with 2 pieces of yarn, and then start the next one with 2 pieces of yarn over, and then drop the old piece and pull the yarn through, and then you're going to just continue with 1 piece of yarn as you would normally do. There's a tiny little bit more bulk, but in the grand scheme of things you can't really see very much difference. And then you just carry on as you are. And the nice thing about this method is that you've already woven in the yarn a tiny little bit, so it's not going to come out. So you're just going to have to weave this in a little bit more, and then you can just cut it, and you don't have to worry about it coming out. And I've used this pretty much everywhere for this blanket so far. So I'll see you at the end of the row. Right, okay, so I'm now at the end of the row. I've done 15 crossed half trebles and chain 1 spaces all across each bottom of each square, and then a chain 5 where the squares join each other. So basically now I'm going to show you how to turn the row, because remember, you're not going to go up the side here. So in my instructions on this post, I wrote on this side you need to chain 1, and that's what I've done here, because I tried it out on the first row, and that's kind of what I liked when I did the tryout. Theoretically you could also do chain 3, because then you would have exactly the same look as you do on this side. I don't think it will matter a huge amount, so if you do the chain one, it shouldn't make too much of a difference. So I'm just going to chain one on this side, and then turn the square around to the wrong side, and then I'm going to grab my next square, make sure that it's facing the wrong way. No, hang on, the right way. Yes, you want to attach the top edge of the square to the bottom edge of the other square. So then you find your corner stitch and you carry on by making a crossed half treble stitch, and you'll join the square with slip stitches to the last one. I'll see you at the end of this row. So now I'm at the end of this, the first square of, this is my last row, so I'm going to show you what to do at the, once you're at the bottom before you join the next square. But I just wanted to show you what to do when you're at the corner, at the first corner of the, ideally, well, not ideally, it's the third square in the, because you have to look at this always in blocks of 4. 4 squares will close a corner off. So 1, 2, 3, and then the next one is the fourth square. Sorry, can you see this? Hang on a second. Just need to move this so that I can see what I'm doing. So yes, so like I said, so this is square 1, square 2, square 3, and then this is square 4, and that fourth square is where you join the corner. And then with the next squares, this will be your first square, your second square, and then this fourth square becomes your third square, and then the next square becomes your fourth square, if that makes sense. So you're always working with 4 squares to join the corner. So this is square number 3, so you're not joining any of the center chain 5s yet. Oopsie daisy. You're going to simply make another chain 5 now. 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you're going to carry on with your half trebles all the way down the side before you join your next square. So I'll see you at the end of that row. Right, I'm now at the bottom of the square, and you're going to do the same thing that you did at the end of the row coming back along the 6 squares at the bottom. You're going to be chaining 1. If you are doing a chain 3 on this side, this edge, do a chain 3 on this bottom edge as well. Remember, this is my last row, so this is row number 8. So you're going to be chaining here on all the rows. You're going to do a chain 5. So rows 1 to 7, you're going to chain 5 when you start joining, when you join a new square, and on the last row you're going to do a chain 1, or if you've decided to do a chain 3, a chain 3. Yeah, and then you basically turn your turn your work again. No, why is this not working? Okay, I've eventually figured out how to turn it so that it wasn't twisted. Okay, so now I've got my next square. So again, you join with the first cross treble, skipping the central stitch and then working back into it. and slip stitch, join to the first square. I apologize if there's quite a bit of background noises of a little girl laughing and a cat meowing, because my daughter is being a complete and utter terror to the cat, which I'm still trying to teach her that she shouldn't be, but somehow she doesn't seem to get that idea. Hang on a second. I forgot to mention that when you attach your squares, please make sure that for the first square of the row, you start joining the top of the square, obviously, to the bottom of the first square of the previous row. All consecutive squares are joined first on the either left side for left-handed people or the right side for right-handed people. Okay, so yeah, and that goes for all of the squares in the row. So you start with the side join, and then you join the top, and then you work down the other side and start the same process over with the next square. I'm going to show you again how to join the corner for the 4 squares, okay, to be joined in the center. So basically, again, you have the chain 5 that you just completed from the first corner of the previous square. Then you have the chain 5, which is from the joining, well, the adding of the edge at the bottom of each square from the previous row. And then you have the bottom chain 5, which joins the 2 squares next to each other together, which you're going to do for rows 1 to 7. So when you are at the corner, you're going to chain 2, and then you're going to insert your hook from the bottom to the top through each of the chain 5 spaces. You're going to slip stitch and chain 2, and then continue with the crossed half treble join across the top edge of the following square, using slip stitches to join the 2 squares together. And remember, don't join in this long chain space. Make the first slip stitch for the square into the first chain 1 space, otherwise you're going to end up with 1 extra one in the top square. Okay, I'm going to see you at once I've finished joining the top edge and gone down the next side, and then I'm going to show you how to finish off the blankets at the bottom and on the side. Okay, I'm now at the bottom of this square, which I'm going to pretend is my 6th square, just so that I can show you how to work this edge and what to do with this chain 1 or chain 3 space that you've made along the bottom edge on row 8, and also up the side. That needs to still be done. So basically, you're going to start with the corner and you're going to chain 3, and then you're going to work the crossed half treble across the bottom of the first square, and I'll show you what to do with the next join of 2 squares in a moment. Hang on. Okay, so I'm at the end of the row for this particular square. So just to remind you, I did a chain 3 in the corner, which pretend this is your my 6th square. As you can see, it's just 2, but this is just so that I can get this video up and online in the near distance future. So yeah, so basically you're going to chain 3 in all of the corners. That would be your right hand corner and your left hand corner 6 squares further on, or in the case of right hand people, your left hand corner and your right hand corner 6 squares further on. For each of the chain 1 joins, you're going to chain 1, slip stitch, and then chain 1 again, and then carry on with your crossed half trebles. And that is basically all that is to it. Excuse me. And you're going to do that along the bottom edge and all the way along the side edge, so either the left or the right hand side, depending on whether you're left or right handed. And then your final the final thing to do is to can't get that here, is to join the top edge. Hang on a second, move some things around so that I can show it to you. Is to join the top edge, which would basically be with a last crossed half treble, and then chain 3 and slip stitch to the first half treble, or if you want to do it neater, chain 2 and do an invisible join to finish off the blanket. I think I might do another round of the crossed treble stitches, cross treble chain stitches, but I'm not sure. I definitely know that I'm going to finish it off with a crab stitch at the end. So I'm going to decide at the end of this row, or round rather, whether I'm going to do another row of crossed half trebles chains, or whether I'm going to just do a row of crab stitch to neaten it up a bit. Yeah, so that's basically it. Cheers.